guys, it's Sophie. Currently I'm taking a bio exam, so I'm gonna record my lecture, so I'll be there in spirit. So as you found out before from Anna and Alex and Sophia, Anne Sexton had a very depressing background, so most of her poems are very, very depressing.
Really depressing.
So beware. Okay, so the first poem that we're gonna go over is the Briar Rose / Sleeping Beauty by Anne Sexton. It's kind of a little twist on the original fairy tale story. Okay, and I'll read it out loud. You can just follow along on the Promethean or on your desk. Okay. Consider a girl who keeps slipping off, arms limp as old carrots, into the hypnotist's trance, into a spirit world speaking with a gift of tongues. She is stuck in a time machine, suddenly 2 years old, sucking her thumb, as inward as a snail, learning to talk again. She's on a voyage. She is swimming further and further back, like a salmon, struggling into her mother's pocketbook. Little doll child, come here to Papa. Sit on my knee, I have kisses for the back of your neck. A penny for your thoughts, princess. I will hunt them like an emerald. Come be my Snucky and I'll give you a root. That kind of voyage, rank as a honeysuckle. Once a king had a christening for his daughter Briar Rose, and because he only had 12 plates, he only asked 12 fairies to the grand event. The 13th fairy, her fingers as long and thin as straws, her eyes burnt by cigarettes, her uterus empty as her uterus an empty teacup, arrived with an evil gift.
Ew.
She made this prophecy. The princess shall prick herself on a spinning wheel in her 15th year and then fall down dead. Kaput! The court fell silent. The king looked like the Munch's green. Fairies' prophecies in times like those held water. However, the 12th fairy had a certain kind of eraser, and thus she mitigated the curse, changing that death into a 100-year sleep. The king ordered every spinning wheel exterminated and exorcised. Briar Rose grew up to be a goddess, and each night the king bit the hem of her crown. Each night the king bit the hem of her gown to keep her safe. He fastened the moon up with a safety pin to give her perpetual light. He forced every male in the court to scour his tongue with babo, lest they poison the air she dwelt in. Thus she dwelt in his odor, rank as honeysuckle. On her 15th birthday, she pricked her finger on a charred spinning wheel, and the clock stopped. Yes, indeed, she went to sleep. The king and queen went to sleep, the courtiers, the flies on the wall. The fire in the hearth grew still, and the roast meat stopped crackling. The trees turned into metal, and the dog became china. They all lay in a trance, each a Titanic stuck in a time machine. Even the frogs were zombies. Only a bunch of briar roses grew, forming a great wall of tacks around the castle. Many princes tried to get through the brambles, for they had heard much of Briar Rose, but they had not scoured their tongues, so they were held by the thorns, and thus were crucified. In due time, 100 years passed, and a prince got through. The briars parted as if for Moses, and the prince found the tableau intact. He kissed Briar Rose, and she woke up crying, "Daddy, Daddy!" Presto, she's out of prison. She married the prince, and all went well, except for the fear of sleep. Briar Rose was an insomniac. She could not nap or lie in sleep without the court chemist mixing her some kind of knockout drops, and never in the prince's presence. If it is to come, she said, sleep must take me unawares, while I'm laughing or dancing, so that I do not know that brutal place where I lay down with cattle prods, the hole in my cheek open. Further, I must not dream, for when I do, I see the table set and a faltering crone at my place, her eyes burnt by cigarettes, as she eats the betrayal like a slice of meat. I must not sleep, for while I'm asleep I'm 90 and think I'm dying. Death rattles in my throat like a marble. I wear tubes like earrings, I lie as still as a bar of iron. You can stick a needle through my kneecap and I won't flinch. I'm all shot up with Novocaine, this trance girl is yours to do with. You could lay her in a grave, an awful package, and shove dirt on her face and she'll never call back. Hello there! But if you kissed her on the mouth, her eyes would swing open. She would call out, "Daddy, Daddy!" Presto, she's out of prison. There was a theft, that much I am told. I was abandoned, that much I know. I was forced backward, I was forced forward. I was passed hand to hand like a bowl of fruit. Each night I am nailed into place and forget who I am. Daddy, that's another kind of prison. It's not the prince at all. But my father drunkenly bends over my bed, circling the abyss like a shark. My father thick upon me like some sleeping jellyfish. What voyage is this, little girl? This coming out of prison? God help. This life after death. We read this very long poem. We're going to start to analyze it. So I think we're going to start from the tone and then work our way up to the meaning. So the tone of this poem, I believe, is that it's very disturbed and hopeless, because even though this is a children's story, like, you know, it's a fairy tale, it's kind of more like the negative aspect of it, and it's like more mature rather than childlike, like in like poems and fairy tales, I mean. So after an overall skim of the poem, we can tell that there's going to be a lot of shifts in the poem, and that the structure, it's very long, and it's very like a run-on sentence, and it's like the thoughts are pretty scattered, and I think these long sentences kind of like mirror like storytelling. Like when you're telling a story, it's very long, and there's not really a lot of breaks. Also, the scatteredness of these thoughts mirrors like disorientation, which we later find out is due to drugs from Briar Rose. Okay, so this begins talking about a girl. We don't know who she is yet, but she's pretty much identified as like carrots, snails. Like there's a lot of similes in there, like a salmon, little dog child princess, and that's kind of referring to like how she's not really herself, and people considered her to be like an object, especially her father. Her father, we later find out, assaults her and sexually abuses her. And in the beginning, there's a little allusion and like kind of a foreshadow to the rest of the poem when this girl is in a hypnotist trance. So the trance refers to like her drug taking after her assault, and the gift of tongues kind of refers to evil, like a snake's tongue is evil, and it kind of foreshadows like the evil that corrupts her later on in the poem. And we see that the only mention of her mother is kind of in the beginning, where she's struggling into her mother's pocketbook, and that kind of implies that there really was no mother figure for her, so she didn't really have a role model to look up to, and the only like parent in her life was her father, and her father was very abusive. Okay, so the next stanza, the father's talking to this girl, and he's like, "Come be my Snooki." And Snooki is a euphemism, actually. I looked this up for Nookie, and Nookie is like it's like sexual intercourse. So that kind of more like clarifies that she's being assaulted. Throughout the poem, there's a lot of repetition of voyage, and that kind of is like the voyage to adulthood, pretty much. It was a very fast voyage because she was assaulted, so she had to grow up very fast. But then throughout the poem, she keeps referring back to her past, so she's like kind of moving backward and kind of stuck in the past, so she's not really on this trip. There's also a repetition of trance, and like the hypnotist trance. They all lie in a trance. This trance girl, and it's kind of like, as I said before, it's the trance that she's has because of drugs, but it's also the trance that like her everyone else around her has, because they don't really realize that she's being assaulted, and they kind of choose to ignore it, which is kind of relating back to society today, where like we tend to overlook sexual assault, and like that's a big problem in society today. So yeah. Okay, so then she starts talking about the curse that Briar Rose gets from the 13th fairy because she was invited to the whole thing. You know the story of Sleeping Beauty. This 13th fairy is kind of like a contrast to Briar Rose. She's infertile, as you can tell by her uterus being an empty teacup. And she's kind of the symbol for an imperfect woman. She's unhealthy because she smokes. Her eyes are burnt by cigarettes. And like Briar Rose is very innocent and she's clean and healthy. So that's a little contrast. And then after the curse, there's another illusion, and it's allusion to this piece of artwork. The king looked like the Munch's Scream. This is the Munch's Scream. That's an imagery to the king's face. And as a result of this like shock, he starts trying to protect her, which kind of mirrors like parents' protections over their children. But I guess corruption is pretty much inevitable, which you can see here. He orders every spinning wheel to be exterminated. He bites the hem of her gown to keep her safe. He fastens the moon up to give her perpetual light, so she's kind of confined in her room, like Rapunzel is. Kind of a little connection there. And it's kind of ironic because, like, while he's trying to protect her, he's the one harming her and he's the one corrupting her through sexual assault. Hey guys, I kind of had to like shift points of view because my sister refused to take the video, so then yeah. As I was saying, there's a lot of references to sharp objects such as the safety pin, tacks, thorns, crucified, cattle prods, briars, and needles, and it kind of like is like referring to the loss of innocence. Also, there's a lot of like there's a motif of time. There's a lot of shifts, first of all, of time. There's a shift when in line after line 6 when into line 7 when it's saying she's stuck in a time machine, so it's going back in time. There's another shift when they're talking about her 15th birthday. There's a lot of shifts from like past and like events in the past, if you know what I'm saying. And there's also a shift in point of view. So there's a shift between talking about third person when she's talking about a girl and Briar Rose, and then later it gets the perspective of Briar Rose in the end when she's saying there was a theft, that much I am told, I was abandoned. So you kind of get her like point of view and perspective on the whole on her whole childhood experience. And like the fact that most of this is like talking about the past kind of like mirrors Briar Rose's tendency to just focus on the past and not really like move on into the future, because that assault was such a big part of her past and it kind of like scarred her in a sense. So she always has to go back. Like it's always reminding her of what happened. Also, a repetition in rank as a honeysuckle whenever talking about her father. And honeysuckles actually are flowers that, like, if they grow in your garden, it's supposed to, like, prevent your garden from evil. So I think that it's pretty much ironic because honeysuckle, which is her father in a sense, is trying to protect her from evil, but he actually is the evil that's corrupting her. I found that kind of funny. There's also a repetition in the word daddy, which is kind of like the childhood like word to go for like your dad, and like whenever you were younger you would always be like daddy, daddy, and this like it kind of shows that Briar Rose is still super young. Like she kind of like it kind of shows that she was really young when she got sexually assaulted, and she's still calling her dad daddy, and even 100 years after all that sleep she still calls him daddy, which kind of shows that she didn't really grow and mature. Also, maybe I should have covered this in the beginning, but Briar Rose is actually like a symbol for this whole thing. Like, Briar Rose is a nickname that one of the fairies gave Sleeping Beauty, and a briar is kind of like a huge mass of thorns, and so this briar rose is like a thorns covering this rose for protection and stuff, and a rose is actually like the symbol of Virgin Mary, so it's kind of funny, and it's kind of, I don't know. Speaking of Virgin Mary, there's also a lot of references, like religious references. When she's talking about crucifixion and the briars parted as if for Moses. And this is when they're talking about the prince's competition to wake up Briar Rose. And it's kind of funny because these men were competing for Briar because she was like the perfect woman, and they thought that she was like a virgin. There was a competition for this virgin, but little did they know that she was not a virgin because her father took her virginity. After she wakes up, we realize that there's a lot of effects to this assault. She couldn't sleep, and so as a result, she had to take drugs. Overall, there's a lot of like magical and fairy tale elements in this poem, such as the word presto. It's like presto, kaput, princess, hello there, and it's kind of shows it kind of supports that it is a version of a children's story, but we know that there's a lot more to it. There's also a lot of references to her dad as like threatening monsters like shark or sleeping jellyfish, and that's kind of shows that she sees her father as dangerous, something that most children don't normally see their dad, but because he did that stuff to her, she sees her father as a threat. In the last two lines, she says, "God help this life after death," and it's kind of referring to the afterlife, and because she was corrupted, I think that her afterlife, which is her after her death, which was the sleep of 100 years, like when she woke up, it was literally just hell for her. And overall, this contributes to the like whole meaning of this poem, and that's kind of talking about how there's a lot of themes in this poem. First is the tendency for parents to protect their children, such as her dad trying to protect her from the spinning wheel, but we realize that corruption is kind of inevitable. No matter how much parents try to fight it, there's gonna be some sort of corruption, and that corruption came from her father. Overall, there's a lot of thematic references to the effects of sexual harassment and rape. Society forgets to realize that sexual assault is not a joke. There's a lot of consequences to sexual assault, especially for the girls. For example, she took drugs, she can't move forward. This whole poem, she never moves forward, she never grows. She stays stuck in the past because that's all she knows. And also the realization that the people around her are in the trance. They don't realize that this man is assaulting her. So it kind of reflects like our tendency to look over all the sexual assault. And yeah, so that's the analysis of this poem. Have fun with the next one.